everybody. This is the August 30, 2017 meeting of the Portland City Council. Carla, please call the roll.
Saltzman, Udaly.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. So I'd like to start off with an important recognition. We are blessed with a special guest this morning. I'd like to introduce former Selectman Peter Fish from Berkshire County, Massachusetts. Peter, we have a Fish. We have a Commissioner Fish here too. What a coincidence. So this is Commissioner Nick Fish's brother. Now, I don't know who's the older brother and who's the younger brother.
We're 11 months apart.
That didn't answer the question, did it?
Here's the baby.
All right, very good. Well, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you. The usual statement, folks, I think everybody here has heard it at least 100 times. Let's give people the opportunity to testify, give them the respect they deserve, give them the opportunity to be heard. We want this to be a safe and welcoming environment for everybody, whether you agree with what they say or whether you don't. Same goes true when the council is deliberating. We ask that people allow us to do that. There'll be two opportunities for people to address the council during communications, which we'll get to in a minute, and also the first readings of reports and ordinances and resolutions. If you would like to speak, you can sign up here with the council clerk for communications. That requires an advance notification, but if you'd like to testify on one of the items today, you can just sign up with Carla. Typically, depending upon how many people we have, we allow 3 minutes is our preference. 30 seconds before your 3 minutes is up, the yellow light goes on. When your time's up, a red light goes off. We'd ask you to respect those time limits, please. If you are a lobbyist, we require you to disclose that. If you're here representing an organization, that is also helpful. We don't tend to applaud. We never boo. Thumbs up if you like something. Thumbs down if you don't like something is sufficient to register your pleasure or displeasure. So with that, we will move into the first item, which is communications. Carla, please call the first item.
Item 948, request of Zero to address council regarding phone app idea and request for information.
Good morning.
So I took about a week off from school ending and work starting to focus on activism, and I've never done activism in my life. So I think I might be doing it right. I'm not sure. I would like to ask for a little bit more time, 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay.
Go for it.
All right, so my name, by the way, the phone app thing, I wasn't sure what I needed to write on there. My name is 1015814129144195525. This is my first attempt at a transmission. This is a distress signal. I'm stuck. This isn't funny. I'm 1 in 3 realities short of losing my mind and about 1 reality short of being a genius. Let this millennial manifesto be a blinding light or a beacon to show the misguided or uneducated millennials are the most educated class in America. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. The purpose of me being here today is to encourage other people to get involved. It is also going to serve as a stress test, and I am here to ask the tough questions. This forum is not a good form of communication. Nice job on the police reform thing. The consultant was a nice touch. The only hope we have is to take good notes and be able to replicate this in other cities. We could even ask for a donation for our services. Most people don't know that they can sign up and ask you anything. They can tell you what they had for breakfast or what they did last Sunday. I had strawberry Snickers. People my age say government sucks, but I read this as, how can I interact with government in a meaningful way? How can the mayor increase his agency by 15% and also increase his dynamic movement by 4%? People are starting to wonder. You are really good at primary communication, but your secondary communication skills needs work. For example, is Portland prepared for a nuclear attack? Because if the city blows up, I won't be able to finish my degree and pay back my student loans, and I don't know how I'm going to pass that down to my kids yet. The primary communication is to make sure that people are safe from nuclear attack and we are ready for a second. And the secondary communication is we take this threat seriously, and nuclear war with fire and fury has consequences. Ted, you were the disruption candidate. We saw business and finance and voted for you. We like they voted, just like they voted for Trump, but nothing changed. Trump broke the normal discourse of political dialogue. You have more agency to say what you want in politics now than ever before. I'm almost done. You should use your advantage when communicating. We are the biggest city in Oregon, make plans to strengthen our city, in turn strengthen the city's brand, in turn strengthen the state's brand. This is how we survive the right in America to continue to say no and continue to be a sanctuary city. I just have a little bit longer, is that okay?
Can you start wrapping it up, please, because we have lots of other people who'd like to
Yes.
testify. Thank you.
We need to plan if we do not have a loss of, we need to plan for a loss of funding from the federal government for our sanctuary city status. Humility is the expectation of absurdity until proven wrong scientifically or historically. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Next item, please.
949, request of Star Stoffer to address council regarding concerns with Portland Police Bureau.
Good morning.
Good morning, Star Stoffer. Actually, I'm changing up my testimony today a little bit because of an incident that occurred last week here at City Hall. The Portland police suck. There's no question about that. They're racist, and they're a bunch of white supremacists, KKK, and every time I see them in all their riot gear, I feel like I'm at a rally. They're just wearing different color bed sheets. However, last week when I came here with Kelly Tadlock, a woman that is disabled, who has a van that is wheelchair accessible, came here. We could not park and get her out in the front of the building because those handicap spaces in the front of the building are not made for people with wheelchairs. Everybody that gets in a van with a wheelchair gets out on the passenger side. The curb is not on the right side when you park in front of City Hall. Not only that, if I let her out in the middle of traffic, which would be the only option, she then has to roll her wheelchair all the way to the corner to go up the ramp. Not only that, once she's in the building, she has to maneuver past those ridiculously expensive turnstiles that you've put in. Not only that, if there's a fire or some kind of an emergency, she's got one exit out. And God forbid everybody in this building panic because she can't get out the back way. There is no equal access to this building. Equal access means that you don't have to do extra work in order to access the building. We had to let her out in the back of the building on 5th. We asked security if we could park in your spot, Mayor, to make it easier for her to participate in city process. We were told no. A woman with a disability was denied a more convenient way to access her own government. Then she had to wheel her chair all the way around. So if you can afford to put in $200,000 in turnstiles, you can afford to put a ramp in the back for your citizens that have disabilities. And you can certainly afford to update the building and its parking to make way for people with disabilities so that they can safely and conveniently participate in city processes like everybody else gets to. Right now, what you have is a wheelchair accessible spot, so you say, where the passenger door would open up into the middle of 4th Avenue traffic, where your cops and many other citizens in this city drive like they're on a racetrack. That's shameful. It's easier to get $4 million in bullets approved to shoot at citizens than it is to make sure that they're safe to access the building and have equal opportunity to talk to their government and participate in city process. So it needs to be fixed. And it needs to be fixed now, and not Saltzman's way, where it's fixed when he feels like it, where he can just put everybody off. It needs to be fixed now, because it's shameful. It's shameful. And if you don't fix it, then I'm going to shut that side of the building down, and nobody's going to be able to use it. And we'll all stay on the sidewalk, and we'll all have our cameras out, so that everybody can see how the Portland Police and you feel about people with disabilities. Probably right along par with how you feel about black people.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 950, request of James Offsink to address council regarding injustice in Portland.
Good morning.
I'm James Offsink, and I'm speaking today on behalf of Portland's Resistance. We are one of the most organized resistance movements in the country and work hard to bring thousands of Portlanders into active engagement with national and local issues. Hundreds of people have attended our civic meetings and candidate forums, thousands have marched with us in the streets, and each month tens of thousands of people interact with us online. We advocate for a progressive slate of policies, starting with turning around our criminal justice system. It is disingenuous to ride the winds of public opinion and rail against violent white supremacists in far-off cities while keeping employees like Captain Mark Kruger in a position of authority at the Portland Police Bureau. We can't claim to be a sanctuary city on the one hand and promote the supposed security of communities of color while still racistly over-policing those same communities. Whether it's crossing the street, driving a car, or finding an inconspicuous place to sleep, our city punishes people for the color of their skin. Black Oregonians are almost twice as likely to be incarcerated as African Americans in Washington, and more than 5 times as likely to be incarcerated than white Oregonians. And it's not just incarceration, it's every single level of our criminal justice system, from stops to citations to arrests to mass incarceration. Every one of those interactions, which are disproportionately levied against people of color, invalidates the very sanctuary that we profess. Every one of those interactions is a pretext for a deportation or an opportunity lost to find a job or secure housing. So turns the wheel of intergenerational inequality. And this is not some problem that Donald Trump or Jeff Sessions created. We built this with decades of covert and overt systemic racism. But for exactly that reason, we don't need to wait for the federal government to step in and end it. You, the 5 of you, although 4 would be enough, we don't need Saltzman today, working today or this week or this month can radically change the arc of justice in our system. Decriminalize the nuisance stops that are the first entry points into police harassing communities of color and people suffering from poverty and addiction. Here are 5 changes each of you should go on the record starting today as supporting. Ending sweeps of houseless encampments. Stop prisoning addicts for being addicted. Shutter the racist Portland gang database. Ban military-grade weapons and publish police stop data. These are things that are all within your power to do, and you could start today. At Portland's Resistance, we believe that resisting the heinous ideas of Donald Trump is important. We must say no to fascism, to racism, to bigotry, and to hate. But even more important than opposing the terrible and anti-American rhetoric of our embarrassment in chief is to say yes to the proactive policies that will build an inspirational alternative for other citizens. While the federal government is driven into the ground, it's up to us, up to you, and the people of Portland to demonstrate that we can be a beacon of light and build an inclusive society that is better because of our differences and truly works for the least well-off amongst us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Next item, please.
951, request of Lightning Super Watchdog X to address council regarding repatriate overseas money.
Folks, I didn't read the whole statement because I really didn't want to, but now I feel like we need to remind people that if you act out and disrupt either testimony or council deliberations, you will be asked to leave. And if you do not leave when you're asked to leave, you're subject to arrest for trespassing. Nobody wants it to happen, so let's all try to be respectful and let people talk. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. First of all, if we're in a state of housing emergency, I want to put a moratorium on all your salaries, your wages. When you declare a state of emergency, we need to also not give you a pay raise. We need to not pay you additional money at that time. We're in a state of emergency. Put some skin in the game. Join us. Quit getting your pay raises. Issue number 2, the offshore overseas corporations that are basically hiding their money and receiving tremendous profits by doing so. We need to bring the money back. We need to have an understanding from these corporations, such as Apple, who has $230 billion overseas, Pfizer, $197 billion, Microsoft, $124 billion, General Electric, $82 billion, Nike, $10 billion, Intel, $46 billion. Bring the money back to the United States. We need to have the money brought back. We need to create a universal basic income. We need to have an understanding that everybody in the United States does not need to be living poverty. They need to have a decent income every month, $1,000 per month to every citizen in the United States. Bring your money back. Listen to Elon Musk. Listen to Mark Zuckerberg. Listen to Sam Altman, and understand every citizen in the United States deserves a grant from the federal government, from the government, for their basic living expenses. It can be done. We need to start creating ways to do it, and I'm asking that we repatriate the money back. We set up a universal basic income investment fund. We have the people running this, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and various other people, to set this up and begin to understand the interest accrued will go back into the universal basic income off of this plan. It can be done. We can begin to chop away at the fossil fuel subsidies also. And again, I'm putting a moratorium on all your salaries. You're overpaid. Your pensions are bloated. You're taking all the money from the citizens. Start giving it back and taking the people off the streets and putting them into housing. Make sure they live better, and quit paying yourself so much money. You're not doing your job. If we're in a state of housing emergency, put a moratorium on your salaries. Put a moratorium. We need to make some big changes here. Again, if you don't go forward on the universal basic income, I'm going to start going after your salaries. I'm going after your pensions. And sooner or later, we're going to claim bankruptcy on this city. And guess what you're going to have, like Venezuela or all these other places? You'll have nothing at the end of the day. So take it for what it's worth. Start taking care of all the people in this city.
Thank you.
All the people in this city. Take care of all of them. Nobody needs to live in poverty.
Thank you.
Why
Appreciate
are
it.
they?
Thank you. Next,
Because you're taking
excuse
the
me.
money and using it on yourself.
Thank you for your testimony. Next item, please.
952, request of Lori King to address council regarding September 10th White Nationalist event in Portland.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Wheeler and City Council members. Thanks for this time to speak. I'm Lori King, a Jobs with Justice and Climate Jobs activist. On September 10th, Portland is slated yet again to be the site of a white supremacist event. Joey Gibson is mobilizing a Portland Freedom March featuring a prominent Confederate monument defender. I believe, and many would agree, probably you too, that as the people who were elected to be in charge of the city of Portland, you have an ethical obligation to clearly and definitively demonstrate that you're against white supremacy. In the August 16th message from elected leaders in the Portland area, it is great that you all say that each of us can take a stand against racism. Two clear ways for you to take a stand against racism on September 10th are to, one, join the Portland Stands United Against Hate rally and march at Terry Shrunk Plaza at 1 o'clock. And two, publicly encourage Portland residents to be at this protest, to come out in their thousands. Get on the media. 67 racist rallies were recently canceled, not because people stayed home or marched on a different day or marched far away. People came out, but because people came out in overwhelming numbers and were visible to the white supremacists. I believe that it's critical for you all to show by your public actions which side you're on, because at this point, Joey Gibson and other white supremacists feel all too comfortable here in Portland. Just a few of the things that I'm sure they've noticed. On May 25th, the night before the racial assaults and murders on the Max by Jeremy Christian, an African-American woman was attacked by Christian. The police officer who arrived at the scene did not apprehend him. Imagine if this woman were white and Christian were black. On May 26th, after having stabbed 2 heroes to death, police officers let Christian keep ranting and drinking a beer before arresting him. Again, imagine if things were reversed racially. The double standards are all too clear. On May Day on June 4th, peaceful participants were met by militarized police in riot gear with concussion grenades and more. Hundreds of May Day participants had their free speech curtailed in collective punishment. On June 4th, anti-white supremacists were rounded up and forced to have their IDs recorded before they could leave Chapman Square, while nothing like this happened to white supremacists whose free speech was protected. On the positive side, many of us noticed that at the August 18th Eclipse hate rally and march, it was not met by police, militarized police, and it worked well. Will you join the Portland Stands United Against Hate rally that is endorsed by more than 35 groups and a growing number of groups, including the Portland Association of Teachers, SEIU 503 E-Board, SEIU 49, the Main Street Alliance, VOS, and Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon? Will you use your bully pulpit to help make Portland like Boston? We all can and must do our parts. We really hope you do this. And I'd just like to ask if people agree with me, please raise your hand or stand. And I just thought of this last week to come to you, so.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Glad you're here. Thank you
And
for
I'm
your
leaving-
testimony.
leaving some.
Thank you. Let's see, with that, let's see what time do we have there. We'll say 9:40. Why don't we move to, well, first of all, on the consent agenda, have any items been withdrawn, Carla?
No, I do not have any.
Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye, consent agenda is adopted. First time certain item, please, 953.
Report on recent audit work from the city auditor, Portland's financial condition, risk management, tree code.
Auditor Mary Hull Caballero is here today to introduce the report. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I am City Auditor Mary Hull Caballero, and I am here today with Senior Management Auditors Christine Adams-Wanberg, Kari Guy, and Martha Prinz.
Welcome.
Madam Auditor, can I ask you a question? Is this the first time under this mayor where you've come forward with a comprehensive suite of presentations on audits?
Yes, and I was going to address why.
Oh, okay, no. Well, I wanted to applaud you for doing so, but I don't want to steal your thunder.
Okay.
Thank you.
It has not been the practice of the Auditor's Office to speak to council as a group about our audit findings and recommendations, and this presentation changes that. My hope is that commissioners in charge of bureaus that are the subject of our audits take our results in the spirit in which we intend them, which is for the city to become more effective, efficient, and equitable. We also hope to use these opportunities to highlight themes across audits that can apply to operations and programs, whether or not they are the subject of any particular audit. And we have the results from 3 audits to present today. We're going to talk about the city's financial condition, risk management, and the implementation of the tree code. And we're going to begin with the financial condition audit.
Good morning,
Morning.
Mayor and Commissioners. For the record, my name is Christine Adams-Wanberg, and I'm with the Audit Services Division of the elected city of the Auditor's Office. I want to cover just a couple of things about the city's financial condition report. This is a report that we typically do every 2 years. It's basically a high-level report to look at trends in citywide indicators. It's essentially trying to take our CAFR document, which is this thick, and to turn it into something like this, which is kind of fun. There are other jurisdictions that do this type of report, so it's fairly common in our area. The information comes from the city's audited CAFR. It's really intended for a broad audience. In this particular one, we did not have recommendations. Sometimes we produce recommendations in them, sometimes we don't. So a couple things I wanted to highlight in terms of things that we saw that were really good for the city in terms of our financial indicators. We have very diverse revenue sources, which is excellent for our city. We have very good bond ratings, and our liquidity is in very good shape, as you'll see from the information on the slides. Over the last couple of years, our property taxes grew 8%. Now, these were the property taxes that actually came to the city. This is not all the property taxes that go to the county and all the other jurisdictions. But they grew from 8% between 2012 and 2016. But one of the things that we noted is for the money that is coming to us, the property tax dollars, for each property tax dollar, less than half of that is actually going to the general fund now. That's the same as it was 5 years ago, but we have noticed over a 10-year time trend that is actually shrinking. Another thing that I wanted to highlight, and this is something that has been brought up to you at various other times, is if you look at the condition of our city's assets, our utility assets, our water and sewer, are really in pretty good shape. About 69% are deemed in good shape, but our transportation assets tend to be failing. Now, please note that the information that we put in this document was actually before the new gas tax went in, so we're hoping in 2 years when we come back to you with our next report that we'll see an impact of that the transportation assets are in better condition. The last thing that I wanted to highlight is our net position. Now, net position is essentially everything you owe minus everything, or everything you own minus everything you owe. So all the assets minus all your liabilities. And what we like to see in this is that your net position is basically increasing over time. And that's what we're seeing for basically our utility net position. We're investing in our infrastructure and our net position is going up due to that investment in our capital assets. The general government net position, so this would be for services such as transportation, parks, police, administration, those are going down. And this is primarily because of our FPD and our liability. One thing we did want to note is we have seen some encouraging changes from the Office of Management and Finance. In our previous report, we had asked them to do more information provision to you, to give you more information with a popular annual financial report, as well as coming to you every year to give you an update on what's going with the city's financial position, and they have been doing that, so we are encouraged by that. And with that, I would like to turn it over for the risk audit.
Thanks. Next up, City Risk. I'm Kari Guy with the Auditor's Office.
Morning.
So City Risk is a division of the Office of Management and Finance, and they're charged with, they monitor and coordinate citywide safety programs. They also manage all workers' comp claims and general liability claims for the city, and they purchase insurance for the city. We audited 2 of those programs, their safety and loss prevention and their liability claims management. The city auditor has suggested that reports aren't always the most readable, and so this is our first attempt at a video to explain our audit results. Let's see if I can.
Our audit found that the city needs a more proactive approach to safety and loss prevention, but that claim management usually works well. Portland's Risk Management Division spends almost $16 million each year to help city bureaus reduce injuries and loss and to manage and pay claims against the city if an incident occurs. This audit found that risk management does not follow the city loss prevention requirements to establish safety goals and benchmarks, develop a model loss prevention plan, and help bureaus develop plans that address their safety issues, provide information on injury and accident trends, or report to council on loss prevention activities and results. At the same time, worker injuries at the City of Portland increased 15% from 2012 to 2016. Without a central focus from risk management, City Council and bureaus may not have the information they need to develop safety programs and to budget for and prioritize emerging risks. When an incident occurs and a claim is filed against the city, risk management usually manages those claims well, but lacks a consistent approach. Most people who filed claims with risk management in the past 2 years were positive about the service they received, but some reported long delays and unclear decisions. Risk management recently implemented a new information system, and better use of the system features, like scheduled tasks, could help ensure claims are resolved consistently and on time. we recommend risk management establish a proactive, citywide approach to loss prevention and update its claims management procedures. To view the full report, go to portlandoregon.gov/audit services.
So there are a few issues that may require sort of council decisions or more attention that we didn't completely cover in the video, so I want to highlight a few things. One, you saw in the video that the city does have adopted code and policy around how to have this sort of centralized risk management function. And a lot of that has kind of fallen by the wayside, and risk no longer follows that code. Our recommendation to them was either to follow the code or to come back to you with what their preferred approach is. And they said they will come back to you with code changes. So keep an eye out.
Could you add a couple of sentences of why we fell away from what was established code?
I am not sure. There were staffing changes. It's been I think it's been a long time since, or there are some bureaus who still sort of actively do the planning required, but not all, and risk management does not.
And what is their time frame for coming back to city council with an alternative code?
They did not tell us in the management letter. The second issue is around their information system. Risk management purchased a new information system in 2013. It was implemented in 2013. And one of the primary goals of that system was to provide access to data to all the bureau safety managers, so for Water Bureau, parks, so that they could get access to injury data and safety, like general liability claims. Risk management has not provided that access, and we recommend that they do. What bureau managers tell us is that they would like to be able to identify trends for their bureaus. They'd like to be able to build business cases if they need safety improvements to be able to look at the costs of these injuries. It was pretty consistent from all the bureaus we talked to. Sorry. That they would all they believe it would improve their internal safety programs if they had access to this data. Risk is concerned that they want the data to be perfect before they share it, and they're learning a new system. The argument, I think, for sharing now is that probably environmental services is the best one to know if environmental services data is correct, and having more eyes on it sooner.
Is there a precedent in the city for sharing data that simply states that it's draft or subject to verification?
Well, so we got access to the system to do our review, and they are able to constrain what we're able to see in terms of personally identifiable information. I think they could qualify the data that they share.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And third up
Can we switch out maybe?
You just did. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Okay. Now it's loud.
Maybe just while she's talking, could you swap that mic? Because those are better for some reason. I agree with Nick. Those little ones, they're a little flimsier.
So third up is the $5,000 limit.
Is that better?
That's better.
Is that better? Okay, yeah, everybody says yes. Okay.
The city charter requires that council approve all claims over $5,000 by ordinance. That sounds really loud, but okay. When we reviewed liability claim files, we saw some cases that were over $5,000 that did not come to council. And there's two situations where this happened. One was in a car accident, so say a city truck hits a car, risk would pay up to $5,000 for the medical costs and up to $5,000 for the damage to the vehicle. So you could have a payment up to $10,000 and it's not coming to city council. Similarly, if it's a jointly owned property, there's damage to a home, say, damage up to $10,000, they will pay $5,000 to each of the homeowners. So again, $10,000 is not coming in front of council. We talked to Risk, and they said this has been the practice as long as they can remember, but it is not written down anywhere. So our recommendation to them was that they sort of get your approval for this approach, if this is the right approach, so that the scope of claims that are covered that come before council is clear. And I guess lastly, that $5,000 limit was set in 1976, I think, in charter, and it's not indexed to inflation. So over time, you're just going to see more and more claims. It's in charter, but it might be an issue for a future charter review to look at if $5,000 is still the right level and if it should be indexed to inflation.
I could use some more clarity on how it's supposed to work. So if there's a claim of more than $5,000 and they rule against the claimant, does that come to city council?
No, you only see the ones where they pay claims.
Is it supposed to?
No.
Is it supposed to be heard by a committee or a commission?
No, No. Risk management has the authority to respond to claims. There's one example that came out, I think, this week from the Ombudsman around fair and moral claims.
Yes.
And in that case, those are supposed to be heard by a committee, and that has not been done.
And do you know why or when?
I do not.
That practice fell by the wayside?
I do not.
Okay. I'd like to know.
I would just add that I think that that is another example of where internal practice inside risk management has kind of superseded code and charter provisions. And what the Ombudsman was trying to bring to our attention is that that was done without some sort of affirmative acknowledgement by council, and that it really is just to create awareness for the people who would sit on that committee, and I would be one of those people, that we do have this option to address some of those issues.
And what claims would rise to that being heard by that committee?
You know, I'm not an expert on the fair and moral claims, so I'm
Okay.
hesitant to say much
Well, I
more.
won't take up everyone's time here, but I would like to know more about it, and I guess I'll contact.
I would be happy to talk to you about that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Martha Prince, for the record, and I am an auditor.
Excuse me one sec. Can we stay on risk management for a
Sure.
moment?
Oh, sorry, I thought you were done.
Auditor, I have a couple of questions I want to ask you.
Okay.
And the first question is going to seem incredibly obvious, but, you know, I have learned that I need to ask this question in order to make sure we're all on the same page. Who is the client when risk management does its work? Who's the client?
I view risk management, when it comes to the claims part of their responsibilities, as operating like an insurance company in a way, that like a claim comes in, they do an assessment of whether it should be paid or not, and if it's over $5,000, that information comes to you. If not, if it's denied, that information, it's my understanding, does not come to you either, as you've asked Commissioner Udaly. And so the city is the client.
And because in your summary, there's a reference to the fact that our system is somewhat inconsistent, and that I think, at least in part, has to do with our form of government. Do you believe that greater bureau oversight of risk management on a bureau-by-bureau basis has the potential to address some of these structural problems, or does it have the risk of exacerbating those structural problems?
You know, I think that this is another example, and I had said in my introduction that there are themes across audits. This strikes me as a theme that we see over and over again, where a centralized bureau will have great responsibility and little authority to ask bureaus to do certain things. And this may fall into one of those kinds of situations where there needs to be some thoughts around how much authority should risk management have over bureaus, and how much of it should actually be decentralized, where the bureaus are making those decisions, and risk is a support system to their decision-making.
And I appreciate the way you just framed that, because we've been, with my bureaus, the utilities, we've been struggling with what is that balance. On the one hand, we want the utilities to be accountable, so monitoring risk, managing risk in a thoughtful way, you know, using taxpayer dollars wisely. At the same time, risk management has a set of prescribed responsibilities.
Right.
And it's not completely apparent how you harmonize those two. And I think one of the virtues of this audit is, at a very high level, you sort of tease that out. And I think it does require further conversations through OMF in particular, to see how do we find that sweet spot.
I agree, and I think that that is part of our decision to start bringing our audit results to council, is because we tend to focus on the commissioner in charge of a particular, or whoever the auditee is, the commissioner in charge. We don't often have the opportunity to speak to all of you as a group about these things, and I'm hoping that this is the kind of conversation that can raise these issues up to your level, and that you all can decide how you want that balance to be struck.
And Auditor, because the mayor was not here for another variation of this a couple years ago. I also hope that we, from time to time, schedule work sessions with an audit, because I think while this is enormously helpful and this broadcasts to the broader public and gets out the sort of thematics, we've had some hugely successful work sessions where we've drilled down on a particular problem, and you have framed the problem through either a specific audit of an issue or a theme. And I actually think that we would benefit from doing that more frequently.
We'd be happy to do that.
And with regard to, while we're on the risk management piece, at least tangentially, the fair and moral claims piece, the chief administrative officer is actually waiting for direction from the council on that. So that is a conversation I think we need to continue.
Okay.
Good.
Will the Chief Administrative Officer be coming around to ask each of us our opinion?
I'll make sure that happens.
Okay, ready for trees? So I'll start again. My name is Martha Prince, and I'm an auditor in the auditor's office, and I was the auditor in charge of this particular audit. And this presentation is a bit of a teaser for you because the audit has not actually been released yet, but knowing that we had this session planned, we thought we'd just go ahead and put it on the agenda and speak about it. And just so you know, it's scheduled to be released next Wednesday, which is September 6th. As you know, the tree code was adopted in 2011, but implementation was delayed until January of 2015 due to budget constraints. So it's really just been 2 years that we've had the tree code. It's really the city's first comprehensive set of rules about trees consolidated in one place, and it applies to more trees than previous regulations did. Parks, specifically the Urban Forestry Division and the Bureau of Development Services, were the auditees because they are the primary bureaus implementing the code, although the code affects all the bureaus and everybody in the city, but that's where our focus was. And for this audit, we focused on trees on private property and street trees. Okay, sorry. So just moving to results, I just want to, again, caution you, there's only 2 years of data, so these should not be considered definitive results or the final word on the tree code. And more time will definitely be needed to fully assess how well the code is working. It's also worth noting that there was not a lot of data for the pre-tree code years for us to compare to. So here in this first graph, we compared data from 2015 to data from 2016. And although we didn't look at everything, we generally found that improved tree protection and development from 1 year to the next, as seen here. So for example, this particular graph shows more trees were preserved in residential demolitions in 2016 than in 2015, and that a smaller percentage of demolitions involved someone paying fees instead of preserving trees as required. And in the second graph here on the right, we see a non-development example, which generally in non-development, we saw somewhat less positive results. So for example, here we see that for every 9 trees planted, 10 trees were removed in both 2015 and 2016 in non-development.
Could you give us some examples of non-development
Sure.
situations?
So non-development, the best example, just to simplify, is something you do at your house, which doesn't involve ground disturbance. So you could be, let's see, expanding your kitchen, but not disturbing the ground. And that might trigger something in the tree code for non-development. You might be doing, or you might want to just remove a tree, and it's over a certain size, generally 12 inches, and that's non-development. And you're not removing the tree because you're going to add an ADU. You just would like more light and space in your house, in your yard. So things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And so both development services and Parks Urban Forestry are facing increased workloads, and it's worth noting that's not just because of the tree code. Development permits of all types, not just those that trigger tree-related requirements, are up. And so here what we see is non-development permit applications, which involved urban forestry, which is the green line there on the graph, increased by 51% from 2014 to 2016. And then in the blue line, we see development permit reviews by urban forestry increased by 64% from 2014 to 2016. And so in this one case, we're obviously seeing, we have 1 year of data, which is before the tree code went into effect. An example of the impact of the workload issue is urban forestry doesn't routinely check for compliance that street trees were planted in non-development situations. And they also don't routinely check for compliance with street tree planting rules in the case of smaller development projects. They do respond to complaints, but they're not routinely going out and making sure that what happened with street tree planting took place. So Development Services has a pretty outdated permitting software known as Trax, and it's been an ongoing challenge to get that upgraded, and it affects the tree code in a number of ways. And just one example of a problem with the current permitting system is that real-time information about trees or development projects isn't available in the field. And that would be very useful to have when you're out there and you want to see the history. So it's an efficiency issue in that case. So this past year, Development Services and the Bureau of Technology Services relaunched stalled efforts to upgrade the system. And even though it's a permitting system, it's worth noting that urban forestry would like the new system to include some kind of asset management component so that they're able to track individual trees as assets. As you know, as council members, the city has many plans and priorities. For example, housing affordability, equity, and the tree code should work in concert with those efforts. To give you just a few examples, it's hard to see, but the map on the left shows that the tree canopy isn't equitably distributed, and that there are some aspects of the tree code which help perpetuate that. The tree code can also be expensive for homeowners to comply with, and there are many other things we could discuss, but just letting you know there are some issues with the tree code that may be in conflict with other things the council's trying to achieve.
Can I just acknowledge?
Sure.
I want to say thank you for calling that out, because there is really a tension, particularly as we go further east, where we want to make new investments in our tree canopy. But when we go to some homeowners and say, would you like a tree in the right-of-way?
Right. Yeah.
They're also taking on a liability, a potential liability, and we're going to have to crack that nut if we're going to make progress on equity, because it just doesn't seem fair that we would put the tree in and then tag someone down the road with repairing their sidewalk or whatever the fallout.
Right, and they may have other more pressing concerns, so it's just something to think about. And the document on the right has been described to us by Urban Forestry as the city's vision for trees and the mission statement for trees. It's called the Urban Forestry Management Plan, and it's due for an update since it was last updated in 2004 and is meant to be updated every 10 years. Obviously, a lot's changed in the city since 2004 as far as development pressures and other issues and other priorities. So we think the plan should be updated before any substantial changes are made to the tree code. Finally, here's some considerations for you going forward as elected officials, and these are reflected in our audit recommendations. We think that you should continue to use Bureau-provided data and analysis to continue to assess the effectiveness of the tree code and inform your decision-making as you go forward. Address workload challenges as appropriate, determine the funding level for the new permitting system, and finally, ensure that the tree code and other city plans and priorities are in alignment with each other. Again, the audit will be out next week, and we'll provide you with more information as well as more detailed analysis and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you.
I particularly appreciated the finding in the tree audit that staff in urban forestry have been working really hard and need more support. So that obviously becomes a council discussion, is both fees and also general fund allocations, whereas development services can use permit fees. So that was a particularly helpful piece of your audit. Commissioner, you'd remember we're going to later in a few months come back. The work group that we The work group that we established between bureaus has been working on the issue of street trees. So my position has been I'll take whatever the council wants to do to work on first. I'm more than happy to do it. And we do need to do the amendments. We've got a list of dozens of them. We've got the urban forestry management plan that's outdated. We agree with that. And then also we thought, when we had the discussion earlier this year, that starting with the street tree piece, for the very reason that Commissioner Fish pointed out, might be a way to bite off a manageable piece. I'm not quite sure that it's going to turn out that way, because if with the responsibility was to shift to the government, that would be very expensive and would have to figure
Right.
out a way to do that. So thank you very much. It was a very helpful audit.
Welcome, thank you.
Very good. Does that complete the formal
That concludes our
presentation?
presentation.
We lost the council clerk.
Well, I have a few questions,
please, why don't you
Mayor,
do
and
that?
I'm actually not certain that this is the best time to raise them. I think I might need to speak to staff as well. But first of all, thank you for these reports. I find them really helpful, and even though one of my bureaus got called out, I don't mind at all, because I'm actually really excited to talk to them about adding an asset management component to our new permitting system, which is somewhere near launching. I tried to confirm that on the fly, but couldn't. So I am worried about this conflict between affordable housing and our urban canopy. And there's many points in the report where that's called out. Do you have anything additional to say about that? Because it's certainly, if there is a conflict, and I don't think it is an either-or question, that's something that we need to resolve, because chances are where we're building affordable housing, we have a deficient urban canopy to begin with. Any thoughts on that?
Commissioner, we would consider that a policy decision.
Yeah.
And that is in your lane.
Yes.
And I think we'll stay in our accountability lane on that.
Okay.
And just acknowledge that it's a very difficult conflict.
Yeah.
That will take some additional research and thinking from a policy perspective to resolve it.
So the purposes of this report, you're not going to advise on any kind of technical or policy change. You're just simply letting us know how it's working and if we're complying with existing code.
Correct. We wanted to
Yeah.
look at how implementation was going and report back to you.
Okay.
So that you could take some action if needed.
Well, I think all of these questions are more along those lines, so I guess I'll save them for a future conversation. Thanks.
Very good. Is there any public testimony on this item?
Yes, we have 4 people signed up.
Very good.
The
Thank
first 3 are Mimi Gurman, Star Stoffer, and Joe Walsh.
Thank you very much. Okay. Good morning, Mr. Walsh. Would you like to start?
No, I'm going to defer.
My name is Mimi Gurman. I'm so tired of being here. I'm so tired of the city that pretends to work that doesn't work. Audits. We have audits. What are we talking about today? We're talking about handicap accessibility. We are the people. We're talking about Nazi cops. We're talking about cops in elementary schools. We're talking about risk management. Nick Fish, you wanted to know more about risk management. I'm gonna share some things that I feel about risk management and what needs to be audited that wasn't spoken about today, and maybe you guys could ask the auditors about that. Risk management, auditing. This is a terrible picture because I don't have a lot of money to buy a new printer. This is a Portland police cop with 2 kids from elementary school with this new program that cops should be in elementary school, scaring kids into liking cops who come after them to hurt them. They put these 2 kids in riot gear. The kids are holding a billy club. This is the Portland fucking Police Department.
Okay, I would have to ask again, this is televised. We have an FCC license.
This is the
Please
Portland Police
keep it clean.
Department.
Thank you.
Dealing with kids, scaring children into liking them. Where is the accountability here for the deaths in Portland by police? Where's the accountability regarding Kruger, Nazi cop Kruger, not being fired? Where's the audit on the bullets before the $4 million went to the cops again? Where was that audit? I asked for that audit back, and I got thrown out for it too. I asked for that audit when we were over in the Portland building. Before anybody gave money for more bullets, when that cop who came in to ask for $2 to $4 million said, we ran out early. Where's the audit on that? Where's the outrage on that? Where's the outrage on this when you talk about risk management? What kind of risk management is this? I'm serious. What kind of risk management is this? Where is the management of risk? We talk about loss prevention. Let's talk about Quantas Hayes. Where's the loss prevention from that life lost by cops? All of this ties in. We're the only ones talking about it who come here. People come here and we use the words resist. I'm tired of resisting. I've been resisting a long freaking time. It's time to turn these tables over and fix this stuff. It's time to stand up and say, we're not going to tolerate this anymore because this is not risk management. This is risk. This is creating risk in neighborhoods that are poor. This is creating risk in neighborhoods that have black and brown kids in them. And we sit here and talk about trees. I love trees.
Thank you.
I want trees.
Good morning.
I want trees planted.
Excuse me, your time is up. Please sit down. Excuse me. I'm sorry, you're interrupting testimony. You're interrupting testimony.
You know, Ted, I want you to speak to this. You speak to this. Get that out of my face. Get that out of my face so you can block the mayor from me. Let her speak.
We're in recess. in session. I apologize for the momentary disruption and delay. We're back on track. She'll presumably be watching on TV.
Oh, all right. Well, I just talked to Christine. So my name is Dee White, and I just wanted to testify a little bit about the auditor's report. But first, I just wanted to thank the auditor and thank the citizens of Portland for voting to give the auditor more independence, because it's critical. I mean, it was a critical thing, and I thank you all for passing it unanimously to put it on the ballot. When I heard the auditor say, the main thing I'm testifying today about is about the Water Bureau. I just wanted to encourage the auditor to audit the Water Bureau. And that's what I was asking Christine about. When you say the water assets are in good shape, and you say, and I saw the little chart at 69%. And I said, where do you get that information from? Did you do an audit yourself? And they said, no, we take the information from the city budget office. And what happens is the Water Bureau engineers go out and do an assessment of their assets and report to the budget office, and then the auditor combines it. Well, I know for a fact that the assets in the Water Bureau, as far as the pipes go, there was an audit report back in 2004 that gave an abysmal audit. Thousands of hours in deferred maintenance with the Water Bureau, with the pipes. This past year, during the winter, a record number of mains broke, and the Water Bureau blamed it on the weather. That's impossible. The mains, we've had much colder weather. They haven't been maintained, they haven't been replaced. You're pouring all of your money into new assets, where the biggest chunk of assets in the Water Bureau is our pipes and the distribution system. All of the money that we are paying and ratepayers are paying right now are going into new assets. So I just want to ask the auditor to please audit the Water Bureau and to depend on the Water Bureau engineers when we know that trust is a really big issue with our Water Bureau. The trust among the citizens, it's a very, very big issue, and Mr. Commissioner Fish, you know that. I would just like to please ask the auditor to audit the Water Bureau and correct this false statement, I believe, that Water Bureau assets are in good shape. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for your testimony. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. City manages assets valued at $36 billion. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. 36 billion. Why are there so many homeless people out on the sidewalks? Obviously, we have in these numbers too that your bloated pensions and your salaries are part of the reason. But I'm not going after those, as I have stated. I'm going after the fact of Commissioner Fritz so busy going through her purse right now instead of listening to the public communicators.
Let's keep it to the report, please.
This is my public communication. Please don't interrupt me during my communication. Issue number 2, we basically make, since you interrupted me, I'm going to ask for another 30 seconds. You've thrown my whole speech off. Remember, public communication.
Okay, I'll give you 30 seconds, but keep it to the report,
okay,
please. Thank you.
Fair enough.
Fair
I
deal.
agree with that. Total revenues for the city in 2016 were $1.9 billion. Total expenses, of course, more, $2 billion. It's always going to be that way. No matter how much money you make, we're going to spend it. You make money, we spend it. You've miscalculated the cost. Stop giving away real estate. Stop giving your salaries these increases. Stop this bloated pension situation, which is beginning to sink this city. And understand, if we have 2,000 people currently outside, calculate that in. Calculate that in to the numbers when you create new income. Calculate that in before you start giving your little special project grants away. Calculate that in before you start doing that. And I find it interesting. your general fund revenue, your biggest source from property tax, went up 8%. Well, we've had more buildings being built in the history of Portland than we ever have. So these aren't put on the tax rolls yet. When are they going to roll on the tax rolls? There's a lot of money coming into this wonderful city, and it's all going to be spent by you up here not taking care of the people of this city. It's them, us. Make sure we get our salaries, make sure we get our pensions, make sure we get our house payments, make sure we get our car payments, make sure we get our good health insurance. And the public, you're in second place. Not anymore. Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg have spoken. It's time to listen to them. And Mayor, if I may say to you, it's 15 minutes to drive out to Elon Musk's solar company out there. It takes 15 minutes to introduce yourself, walk through their plant, and set up a meeting with Elon Musk when he comes into town. 15 minutes.
Be thrilled to meet him.
I'm counting on you. And this is a big decision.
Got it. Thank you.
Do not underestimate these people. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Accept the reports.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Thank you to the auditor and her team. Aye.
Fish.
I think Commissioner Fritz and I have served with 3 different auditors, elected auditors. And there's a natural tension in the relationship between the council and an elected auditor, because the auditor is charged with doing audits and doing oversight. I want to just call out the fact that the hallmark of this auditor has been leveraging her audits and engaging the council in problem solving. And that, after all, I think is the hallmark of a great auditor, and I'm very appreciative of that. And by the way, I sound much worse than I am. I apologize. I'm in this phase where the cure is worse than the disease, so I apologize for my voice, but I actually feel better than I sound. Mayor, I hope that we continue this pattern that's been established under your leadership, where whether we like or not the findings of an audit, the council accepts them in a formal way and has a public forum in which we can discuss them and then hold ourselves accountable, because there's no purpose in issuing audits if they're just going to collect dust somewhere. And finally, I just want to call out the symmetry and the serendipity here. Yesterday, the mayor led a work session on Build Portland, and the idea is to capture the long-promised value of urban renewal to deal with significant structural deficits we have in transportation and in parks. And the audit, the financial condition audit clearly points out that we have work to do there. But unlike the utilities, we don't have a dedicated revenue source. And so the mayor has put a bold idea on the table to capture the value of maturing urban renewal districts to address that deficit. And in the last budget, the council embraced a 10-year plan to take the utilities to as close as we can to 100% pay-as-you-go. That is, to fully sustainable infrastructure. If we can do both, if we can leverage urban renewal around transportation and parks, and if we can, in a responsible way, continue to get to as close to 100% as possible of our utility assets in good condition, we'll actually have done something quite noteworthy. And it's one of the more exciting, albeit dry, things that we're doing in this body, and I'm proud to be part of it. Thank you to the auditor for all 3 reports, and I thought this year's financial condition report was the best of the suite that we've received, the best in class of these that we've received. It is the clearest, it is the easiest to read, it calls out the fact that we have debt, and for a reason, and I think it's ultimately the most balanced, and so I appreciate it. Aye.
Udaley? Aye. Wheeler?
So I want to also acknowledge the good work of the auditor. There's 2 things that caught my attention. Commissioner Fish noted one, 25% of the total outlay that was not going to the general fund was actually going into the urban renewal areas, and the Build Portland mechanism actually recaptures general fund to invest in the maintenance of assets that we already own. The second issue is what the Ombudsman raised around fair and moral claims. And one of the reasons I like the audit function is it gets into the nitty-gritty weeds of all of these bureaus in ways that commissioners maybe cannot. And so this Federal and Moral Claims Committee, for example, that's a committee that I'm very interested in, and I know that, as I mentioned, the Chief Administrative Officer is very interested in hearing our views on that and how to re-engage that process. And to Commissioner Fritz's point, I'll make sure that the CAO actually goes from office to office and gives us a deeper presentation and gets some feedback on that from all of us so that we can give guidance to that group. And I'm very interested in hearing answers from risk management to the questions that I asked of the audit team that they could not answer with regard to risk management. I think I need to know the answers to those questions, and I think the council at large needs to know the answers to those questions. So I will push for that. And I don't know if that's a work session environment or a report or something else, but I'll make sure that we're all on the same page with regard to that information. So thank you. The report is accepted. Next item, 954, please.
Accept and appropriate a Metro Nature in Neighborhood Capital Grant Award to Portland Parks and Recreation in the amount of $1 million for the development of the Gateway Green.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a very exciting project, which I know everybody's going to be happy to talk about or listen to. We know that in most of the city of Portland, 4 out of 5 families live within a 10-minute walk of a developed park or a natural area, whereas in East Portland, particularly east of I-205, only 3 of 5 families live within this 10-minute walk. So that's something that I have been working on since I became Parks Commissioner in 2013. In fact, since then, I've announced over $48 million investments in parks and infrastructure in East Portland, some of it being at Gateway Green, which is a particularly challenging site because it's right by the highway, and there's a physical and perhaps a mental barrier delineating where the access exists. So I'm very excited to for you to be here today. I see Ted Gilbert in the audience as well, Linda Robinson. You've just been amazing community champions for this project. I've been happy to be part of it. So I'll turn it over to Ross Swanson and then, or whichever of you want to start. And welcome, Councillor Stacey also.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Ross Swanson. I'm a capital project manager with Portland Parks and Recreation. With me is Linda Robinson, the chair of Friends of Gateway Green, which is the nonprofit partner that we've been working with for a number of years. And then Bob Stacey with Metro, the public sector partner in spirit and as well financially when we're done here today. So Gateway Green is that 24-acre space that's at the confluence of I-205 and I-84. For years of us, most of us just drove by, not really thinking much about it with the exception of Linda Robinson and Ted Gilbert. It's connected to the public through a regional trail system of I-205. Metro recent trail counts that they're estimated about 250,000 people come by every year on bike or foot, so it is connected to the city. Recently, we transformed back in July or June, now it's always a rush. Back in June, we opened a beta version of the park. And this is to see how the public would react to such a unique space and how we could get a symbiotic relationship with the off-road cycling community. Although Portland's known for its vibrant cycling community, we have fallen behind in the area of off-road cycling, and we're using Gateway Green as a tool to get a lessons learned as BPS works on its off-road cycling plan and as we develop our park. The park has been very successful so far in the last couple months, and we've continued to have strong users participate. The fully developed Gateway Green Park will be a regional destination park. It offers basic amenities and restored habitat. All this will provide a unique recreational opportunity for the metro area. And for this reason, the business district has championed Gateway Green Park as a regional destination, and they were going to compose their neighborhood identity out of it. In true Portland spirit, the Gateway Green was brought to life through a grassroots effort. It's a community-led project involving both public and private partners. And as Commissioner mentioned, the successful launch of this project began over a group of dedicated community advocates. I'm proud to turn the microphone over to Linda Robinson, the chair of Gateway Green, and then following her up will be Metro Councilor Bob Stacey.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to tell you more about the background and the history of the project and the timeline. And I don't normally read my testimony, but there's a lot to put in a short time, so I will be reading this summary. On behalf of Friends of Gateway Green, also known as FOG, we are grateful to be part of this unique project, which is an extraordinary example of how public-private partnerships can work. The idea of a park at this location was suggested in late 2005 by Ted Gilbert, a property owner in the Gateway area and member of the Citizen Committee affiliated with the Urban Renewal Area. Ted's in the audience today. The suggestion came in response to an awareness that the area needed something unique to draw people, to draw development, and an awareness that the area was extremely park deficient. When he suggested a park, I agreed to help. So for the next 2 years, Ted and I gathered information. We met one-on-one with key decision makers to assess the viability of the idea. And in late 2007, we secured permission from Audit, the property owner, to lead a public visioning process for the property. On a very cold, snowy day in February 2008, more than 40 people gathered for a charrette. And that's where the idea of a bike park and other came out of that effort. It produced a vision plan, which was published in May of 2008. Friends of Gateway Green was formed in March 2009 to advocate for the acquisition of the property and the development of the park. A partnership agreement between PPNR and FOG was signed, which indicated that FOG would take the lead on public outreach and fundraising for the park. Then in the fall of 2009, Gateway Green became an Oregon Solutions project. This process brought together a group of key stakeholders to examine the feasibility of the park, identify a lead agency, and establish a process for the acquisition and development. The process included numerous stakeholder meetings, a property survey, a property appraisal, and it culminated more than a year later in the Declaration of Cooperation signed by more than 20 groups who agreed to help make the park a reality. In this document, signed on December 10th, 2010, the Parks Bureau agreed to be the lead agency and acquire the property. When the document was updated in 2012, as a major capital campaign was launched, the document was signed that time by more than 40 organizations. FOG did a crowdfund campaign then in 2013 that raised more than $100,000 with more than 750 donors. This funded the next level of planning for the park. And then in October 2014, Parks Bureau acquired approximately 25 of the 38 acres between the two freeways. A couple of months later, FOG applied for a Metro Nature and Neighborhoods Capital Grant. The $100 million request was awarded, subject to raising a $2 million match. So for the next 2 years, FOG focused on raising the match, wrapping up that effort with a second crowdfund campaign in the fall of 2016, which again raised more than $100,000. Statistically, crowdfunding success at this level, not just once, but twice, is unprecedented. We also thank Portland Parks for kicking in enough system development charge funds to reach and exceed the required $2 million match. Construction of the off-road bicycle features started in October 2016 using grant monies and crowdfunding monies raised by FOG. Then more than 1,000 people came out on an extremely hot day in June 2017 to celebrate the completion of this portion of the park. Together, Portland Parks and Friends of Gateway Green request approval to officially accept the $1 million award from Metro's Nature and Neighborhoods Capital Grant Program. This generous award will help transform a long-neglected strip of freeway remnant into a public park. And thank you, Metro, for seeing the value in the project and investing in the East Portland community.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. I'm Bob Stacy, Metro Councilor for District 6. I don't think my district fully includes the Gateway Green site anymore. Sam Chase, oh, really?
No, it's Chase. It is
Yeah,
Sam's.
Sam Chase now has it, but I have the entrance on the south. And I'm very proud to be here on behalf of Metro. As a point of privilege, I'd like to acknowledge two folks from Metro who are with me today. Mary Rose Navarro, who many of you have worked with from Parks and Nature, and our brand new Director of Parks and Nature, John Bleischer, who's here in the audience, and you can stand or wave. We're very excited to have him on board. You're going to be seeing more of him as he takes the reins and works with all our regional partners. Very exciting to be here. Ted Gilbert and Linda Robinson have been working for, as you pointed out, more than a decade. And I've known about Gateway Green since the first time I decided I was running for Metro office in 2009. I went to see my old colleague in public service, Linda, to talk about my campaign, and she talked to me about her campaign. So from that day forward, I've been a strong supporter of the vision that she and Ted have made for this place, and is making it so valuable to East Portland communities, and of course to everyone who aspires to ride off-road, single track and otherwise. We are in this business, the $1 million business, as a consequence of the Nature and Neighborhoods program, which was a grant program funded in the 2006 Regional Parks and Nature Bond Measure. A major portion of that resource from the voters of this region go to acquisitions of new land, protection of natural habitat and water quality, and a portion, the Nature and Neighborhoods Grant Program, to communities for increasing access to existing parks and nature and enhancing the ecological and natural resource habitat and water quality value of those lands. It's a competitive process. But when Gateway Green's application came forward in 2014, the review committee was really blown away and allocated this $1 million grant to Friends of Gateway Green. It will go to making those improvements to habitat, the oak savanna that once, it still does to some extent, occupy that land, other forested areas, restoration work, and also key additions to the access to the property and other facilities. It's all been programmed expertly by Parks and Nature, by your Parks Department, to coordinate with the other resources that Linda identified. This is an investment by the voters of all the region in a very special part of the region. I think we're all very excited to be a part of it, and I wish I had a great big cardboard check, but I think we've already handed the real check over, so.
That's even better.
Yeah, indeed. Unless you have questions, I'll stop.
Colleagues?
I just have one question. Linda's here wearing many hats and also as an advocate. So Linda, you referenced June of this summer when we gathered, and it was unbelievably hot. But what was also made clear was some of the challenges we have in gaining access to Gateway Green. So put on your Queen for a Day hat and just tell us, what's the priority for gaining a better access to the site?
Well, we desperately need better access for large vehicles for maintenance and construction purposes. We have a couple of options. I think the best one is to use a bridge that was built by ODOT for the railroad to access the track, the Union Pacific track. That bridge right now is difficult to use because it brings you within inches of the rail with a very sharp right turn. With a modification of that bridge, with a new ramp off of it, we could come down onto ODOT property, avoid that turn, avoid the right-of-way, the railroad right-of-way altogether. Right now, whenever we need a large vehicle to come in, we have to pay a Union Pacific flagger to come, which is expensive, and they have to drive down the railroad, cross the tracks twice. There's lots of danger and risk involved in that. So funds to put that new ramp on the bridge would help a great deal.
Thank you.
We're not quite done with our presentation yet.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. So on June 24th, we did do the opening. We host Parks and Rec and Friends of Gateway Green hosted what we called the Gathering at the Gateway Green. This is the opening of the Dirt Lab project. The Dirt Lab was the project that was largely funded by the crowdfunding campaign of last September and October, but then also supplemented with system development charge from Parks and Rec. This, again, was the beta version of what we are planning on doing. Once we accept the money with Metro, we're moving forward on the finished product of what Gateway Green will be, and we'll hope to see that out there in 18 months to 24 months.
Could you just make that picture bigger for when? Because this was 100 degrees, like Commissioner Fish was there. 100 degrees. I thought, oh, people are just going to be waiting. I mean, look, all the some people in the shade, but then it was absolutely packed and doing wheelies and goodness knows what else. It was Fabulous.
We estimated we were well over 1,000 people on that day. Again, it was a 100-degree day. There was plenty of other things on an early summer Saturday. The top one is the actual day that they're out there, but if you do show up there on a mild 80-degree Saturday in the summer, it does look like that today as well. What we did when we built the dirt lab, and you'll look down at the bottom, we did this on purpose. You'll see the younger person making progress on the pump track, which is an off-road cycling device, and then finally to the right is an individual doing the dirt jumps. We geared the design of this for progression. In other words, we weren't just going to build a mountain bike park for the typical mountain biker. We geared it towards progression, and when we worked with the design team and Northwest Trail Alliance, this is not uncommon. This is what the off-road cycling community is looking for. So, but moving forward, so we have the dirt lab out there now. Moving forward with the Metro's Nature in the Neighborhood grant, as well as the SDC, we hope to improve the habitat and the plant restoration. We're going to continue to remove invasive plants and trees. What we realized with this is we need a more formalized entrance. We need to make this look like a park as you enter the park. And we're going to probably need gathering spaces, as what we learned on that day was this is a popular gathering space. We can have some real programmed events out here. And then in addition, most people don't think about this with parks, but we need all the utilities, and that would be traditional with any development. We need to get water, and we need to get sanitary out there. Right now, the park does not have it. It does create an issue as far as maintenance on the park. So with this grant in the SDC, we'll move forward in getting that in the next 2 years. The park does have its challenges, as Commissioner Fish had pointed out. We do have access alternatives that we're looking at, and as Linda pointed out, Commissioner Saltzman isn't here, but we are working with PBOT as well. So Linda mentioned the one at the north end, but there's a south end opportunity, and the PBOT has a project called the T-HOP, and I couldn't tell you what that acronym means right now, Tillamook-Halsey something. And that's going to be coming online. It's federally funded, and it'll be coming online in 2021. And we're working with them about how to make their path under the I-205 big enough and wide enough for our maintenance needs, and as well as emergency vehicle needs. So with that, I'm going to think the three of us are going to, well, I'll take questions, but well, no, let's have the partners. This has been a completely partner-driven project, so I think we're going to let Northwest Trail Alliance and Community Cycling Center come up and give and then we'll answer questions as a group, if that's okay.
Good morning.
Good morning. You want to go first? For the record, my name is Chris Rotvik. I'm the current president of the Northwest Trail Alliance. Excuse me, I'm going to end up reading it because I'm a little bit less comfortable in just speaking. So at the Northwest Trail Alliance, we're advocates for trail access. Our all-volunteer nonprofit organization responsibly builds and maintains many of the finest mountain biking trails in the Pacific Northwest. We're delighted to have helped create what could be called Portland's finest and first bike park, and a prototype of how Portland's off-road cycling master plan will benefit the city. Gateway Green represents progression in the sport of mountain biking, of course, as Ross mentioned, but also the progression of new park venues and modes of outdoor recreation throughout Portland, and environmental progression. We all know that outdoor recreation reduces crime rates, improves educational outcomes, and improves health. We know it's a powerful economic engine. But are we aware that outdoor recreation also creates conservation advocates, which progress society in terms of positive environmental change? The potential for this positive change is why we at the Northwest Trail Alliance are very excited about the next phase of development at Gateway Green. In perhaps a year, the city will have created a showcase natural habitat that's completely intertwined with progressive recreation. Both of those promote conservation, and that's a good that extends well beyond city limits. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your being here today. Good morning.
Hi, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Cassandra Griffin. I'm here today in my capacity as the new Executive Director of the Community Cycling Center. We are a well-established Portland institution that has been working for 23 years now to broaden access to bicycling. We believe that all Portlanders, regardless of income and background, should have the opportunity to experience the joy, the freedom, and the health benefits of bicycling. And of course, the health benefits that accrue to all of us from less pollution and climate change. We provide a range of programs primarily serving the residents of North, Northeast, and Outer East Portland. I'm happy to be here to share our story of being a community partner working on this park and in this park. One of the biggest things we do in the Community Cycling Center is we teach summer bike camps. We usually reach about 700 kids per summer. We're teaching those kids how to bike safely, how to read maps, how to get from one part of town to another part of town. What we do mostly is ride around and enjoy our wonderful parks system. So kids go from the starting point to a park and they get off their bikes and they run around and they play, and then they get on their bikes and they ride to another park and they get off and they run around and play some games. Sometimes there are popsicles as an extra benefit. We increasingly offer scholarships to the bike camps to ensure that all kids have access to these fun educational summer programs. In the summer of 2017, we offered 8 bike camps, week-long bike camps, out of 5 different East Portland schools, all on a full scholarship basis, thanks to a different funding stream from City of Portland. That was through the Special Appropriations Program. And we loved those camps. We hope to offer them again in 2018 and beyond. Thank you. The list of schools: Prescott, Shaver, Sacramento, Cherry Park Elementary Schools, and the Park Rose and David Douglas School Districts, and Helensview Alternative School, which is operated by Multnomah Education Service District. So we were having kids meet there and going from there out. And for the older kids, what we were doing this summer was go to Gateway Green and let them ride around on dirt bikes at that new park. The exciting thing that we discovered was that the parks, the jumps in that park and the exciting skills gave different kids an opportunity to shine. So the kids who talked a lot and led the group and wanted to be in charge, normally riding on the streets, were not the ones who were brave on the jumps. The kids who had been quiet and who didn't have the opportunity to be leaders in their age peer cohort were the ones who all of a sudden were like, I'm going to go first, I'm going to go again, I'm going to do it bigger and better. And it gave those kids an opportunity to become leaders and to gain more respect from their peers and have another opportunity. And that's just an example of something like this, giving kids an exciting opportunity to do something different in their neighborhood and have a different role in their peer group. As you know, some of the neighborhoods in East Portland are park deficient. Obviously, we talk about that all the time. And one impact of that is that kids have fewer places to ride a bike. So getting this park in there and giving kids a destination place to ride a bike is one step towards solving the problem. The Community Cycling Center is excited to continue to partner with the city, Friends of Gateway Green, Sun Community Schools, the Trails Alliance, and others to continue offering these programs and to keep doing great stuff in the park and for the underserved residents of East Portland. In closing, 2 funny coincidences. Number one of our mechanics in our bike shop on North Alberta is on the board of Friends of Gateway Green, so we have that relationship. Number 2, 10 years ago, I was collecting SDCs for the City of Portland Parks Department. So I touched some of the money that went into this park previously. So, and Linda, of course, was on the SDC committee for the Parks Department at the time, because we just all move around. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Commissioner Fritz, is that the end of
That's the end of the
formal
presentation.
presentation? Do we have public testimony on this item?
I have one person signed up,
Very good.
Terry Parker.
Mr. Parker, come on up, please. Anybody else want to testify? Very good. We'll close the list after Mary.
Good
Cedric,
morning.
did you want to testify as well?
Oh.
Close the list, please. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Good
sir.
morning. Good morning. My name's Terry Parker. I don't have anything prepared. I was actually downtown for another project and decided I would come over. I want to talk about sustainability and equity. And I'm going to start with something that happened in my neighborhood long before my time. In the 1920s, a racetrack that was a former horse track, car track, motorcycle track was turned into a golf course. It's called Rose City Golf Course. If I go out and play at Rose City Golf Course today, I pay a fee. And it was a community-led drive to put the golf course into place, and yet I go out and pay a fee to do it. If you reserve a ball field, if you use a city swimming pool, if you want a concert in the park, you pay a fee. That's called sustainability of the project. At Metro, you pay a fee, I think, for Blue Lake Park. I haven't been there in years. And I know you pay a fee for Glendevere Golf Course. So why, if you're going to build a special park for a special type of infrastructure for bicycles, why is there not some sort of a fee attached to it, a user fee for sustainability? And the second half of that is equity. If I have to pay a fee to play golf, or use a ball field, or to have a concert in a park, or to use a swimming pool, and the bicycling community doesn't have to pay a fee to use something that's specially built for them, that's not equity. It seems like every time the word bicycle comes up, the word free comes up, and it trumps equity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Good morning, Mary Syke. I just want to thank Commissioner Fritz and everybody who has worked on this project. You know, when you think about it, who would have thought of that piece of land that you could use it for something like that? And while I acknowledge some of what you're saying about assessing fees, I also think this is a really important thing because this is an activity that all somebody needs is a bike. And you know, it's funny, I didn't have a bike growing up, and every bike I've had as an adult has been stolen, so I've given it up. But I think that you know, as this evolves, you probably will have some ideas about whether or not there should be some minimal fees or something like that. But I just think this is incredible. I was sitting here thinking about this and thinking about my son and daughter-in-law are very much into biking, and in fact, I realized tomorrow's their 25th wedding anniversary, and they met because she had a bike for sale. And that just connected with me as I was sitting here, that, you know, that's what brought them together. And after 25 years, they're biking. And she does free clinics for cyclocross and things, actually in a park during the summers. And I just think that, you know, with everything that's going on in our world, that we need to not lose sight of the basic things that we can provide in our community to help everyone enjoy their life and learn, because there is a lot to learn when you're involved with something like biking. And I think this is an incredible thing, and I just can't thank everybody enough for bringing this to fruition. I mean, who would have thought in their wildest dreams that piece of land could be used like this? And so, thank you.
Well said. Thank you, colleagues. Anything else before we move this? Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance.
Can we say some nice things then?
Yeah, please.
Mayor, can I make a motion to add an emergency clause?
Second.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz to add an emergency clause. Any further discussion?
And the reason for that is in the public interest to get this money accepted as quickly as possible.
Call the roll on the amendment.
Sorry. Udaly.
Well, thanks everyone for the presentation. It's always exciting to add a new park, and I'm going to refrain from commenting on the testimony and just vote aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I think this is great, and it's a fantastic example of how the public can help us lead in really interesting and positive ways. The amendment is adopted.
Oh, wait, no, that was the emergency ordinance.
I'm sorry?
That's the emergency.
I'm sorry, correct. The amendment
forgot about
to make it an emergency ordinance, correct. So now we'll call the roll on the main motion as amended.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you to everybody who's been involved. Ted Gilbert and Linda Robinson indeed have shepherded this through the process for a very long time. Linda actually helped me on my very first election campaign, so we've both been in it for quite some time. We worked on the Citywide Parks group together too, and pulled ivy on this very spot, one of the dirtiest and wettest I've ever gotten pulling ivy. And that's one of the reasons that we need the Nature in the Neighbourhoods grant. So thank you, Councillor Stacey. Thank you, Mary Rose Navarro, who's also been in this for a very long time. It was interesting to hear Cassandra talk about where she's been, because Mary Rose used to be in our Parks Department, is now serving at Metro. So it just kind of all comes together, and that's what parks do. Parks bring a lot of different kinds of people together, and good stuff happens when there are people who are willing to work at it, because it's not been easy by any stretch of the imagination. I have to admit, it made my heart feel very good when the Northwest Trail Alliance said that this is the first and the finest bicycle facility in the city of Portland. I've been proud to be part of it. And actually what I said on that 100-degree day was, I was very happy that everybody was wearing a helmet. There's a culture that everybody wears a helmet. So in terms of, wanting to ride a bicycle, I'm not there, but I would probably pay to watch, because it's so interesting and exciting, and just happiness coming through. And secondly, I was a bit reluctant to put this on the agenda with a major presentation, because now East Portland's got this. I think everybody else is going to want one as well. And so it's wonderful that we do have this facility east of 205 that will hopefully make more people realise it's really not that hard to get to Gateway, and you should try it more often. Aye.
Fish.
I want to just also add my thanks to Commissioner Fritz for her stalwart support of this development, and to Ted and Linda for reminding us that we can continue to think and dream big in our community. And boy, do we need that now more than ever. Thank you both. Aye.
Wheeler.
Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks, everybody. This is great. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Next item.
Item 955, David Campbell Memorial Board Report to Council.
Commissioner Fish.
Thank you very much, Mayor. We're going to have our honored guests come up here. They've been with us for a while. They're going to shake out their cobwebs a little bit. Gentlemen, please. It is a singular honor for me, Mayor and colleagues, to make the opening remarks on this in Commissioner Saltzman's stead. Today we honor firefighter Brent Kimple with a Bronze Medal of Valor for his outstanding efforts during the Northwest Gleason gas explosion last October. Firefighter Kimple protected Lieutenant St. John with his own body, even though he was hurt during the blast. He rendered initial care and took over as the lead paramedic. Once Lieutenant St. John was transported to the hospital, Firefighter Kimple received care, but returned to the scene to administer additional treatment to other injured citizens. Now, this type of exceptional bravery needs to be recognized and celebrated. And today we pay honor to firefighter Brett Kimple, a true hero. Colleagues, we know that public service is a calling, but it is also hard and often includes personal sacrifice. Our firefighters are on the front lines of very dangerous work, and they risk their lives every day to protect the community they serve. The sacrifices these firefighters make must not go unnoticed. Today, we salute one of the bravest, who serves the public with great honor. And I'd like to hand the presentation over to Fire Marshal Nate Takara to take it over from there. Thank you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Nate Takara. I'm the Fire Marshal of Portland Fire and Rescue. Unfortunately, Chief Myers was not able to make it today. He sends his regrets. With me is Trustee Paul Cora, as well as the honored firefighter Brett Kimple. Thank you very much for allowing us time here to recognize firefighter Brett Kimple. Presenting an award here would be Trustee Paul Cora, if he looks familiar. He's a retired firefighter. He served the city of Portland for 31 years, and he retired in 2012. And currently, he holds a position as a trustee on the David Campbell Memorial, which he has served for 30 years. Trustee Cora.
Mayor, Commissioners, thanks for having us. Commissioner, thanks for reading that. I had a statement, but I think you covered every single bit of it. I've been part of the David Campbell Memorial Committee for over 30 years, and this is only the third time we've actually handed out this medal. I am honored and privileged and taken back by what Firefighter Brent Kemple did. And with that, I'd like to hand out the medal to him.
Can we do that together?
Yes,
as well,
absolutely.
Mayor?
The David Campbell Memorial, here's the bronze medal of valor. Congratulations. Thank you very much.
One, two, three. Get as much. Yeah.
Okay.
One, two, three. Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Did you want to do that first?
Yes, please.
Commissioner Fritz, we have some language about the honoree today, and would you do us the honor of reading that, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I know folks watching at home, including my parents in love, would really like to know the details here. This, well, as Commissioner Fish said, it was about the Northwest Gleason gas exposure. Although firefighter Brett Kimball was hurt during the blast and bleeding from the head, he rendered initial care and took over as lead paramedic for Lieutenant St. John, who was severely injured in the explosion, and firefighter Kimball did not relinquish lead paramedic duties until Lieutenant St. John was on a stretcher to be transported to the hospital. He protected Lieutenant St. John with his own body and knelt at his feet, feeling that his SCBA, which presumably is a protection thing, would protect both of them should another blast occurred. Once Lieutenant St. John was transported to the hospital, firefighter Kimball received care for himself and then talked his way out of being on the first ambulance in order to return to the scene. He continued administering additional treatment for other injured patients. He was then forced into being transported to the hospital so that he could receive his own treatment. That is exemplary of the kind of dedication that so many of our public servants put in, day out. So I just wanted to give the full details of what exceptional service this was. And again, thank you so much.
Firefighter Kimball, would you like to say a few words?
Just thank you for the opportunity to serve. I have a great job and I'm grateful every day to be a part of a great organization and my family. And I thank the citizens of Portland for the opportunity.
And we're honored to have you. Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 961, authorize application to the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance for a grant in the amount of $385,515 for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Programs fiscal year 2017, local solicitation to assist the Portland metropolitan area law enforcement and criminal justice community to prevent and reduce crime and violence.
And I think we have Bob DeLacy here. Yes, very good. Come on down.
Morning, Mr. Mayor.
Good morning.
Commissioners. My name is Bob Delgizzi, Business Operations Manager for Portland Police Bureau. The item we have before us is the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program for fiscal year 2017 application. On September 5th, the City of Portland will submit an application to the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Justice Programs, Bureau of Justice Assistance for the Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant, also known as JAG. It's the program for fiscal year 2017 local solicitation. Edward Eddie R. Byrne, a New York City police officer, was killed while on duty in 1988. The Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Program was established by the Department of Justice, which directs funding to local law enforcement agencies, with the primary concept being to enhance officer safety via equipment, technology, and training. The 2017 JAG funds will be made under disparate certification to the City of Portland and the City of Gresham. The JAG solicitation requires the city to submit a joint application for the aggregate eligible allocation to all disparate municipalities and to also act as fiscal agent for the grant. An intergovernmental agreement will be executed with the City of Gresham in order to obligate agency roles and responsibilities at the time of the grant award. The grant agreement will be executed with LifeWorks Northwest in order to obligate agency roles and responsibilities at the time of the grant award. Department of Justice has notified the city that it will award a grant in the amount of $385,515 with no match requirement. The award is allocated based on a statutory formula provided by the Bureau of Justice Statistics. The City of Portland will receive $296,723, and the City of Gresham will receive $88,792. The Police Bureau will utilize their JAG funding for the following three items: to hire one full-time equivalent training and development analyst for approximately 24 months. This position will be pivotal in the development and implementation of the Police Bureau's equity training plan. A contract with LifeWorks Northwest to coordinate treatment, temporary housing, counseling, and training opportunities for individuals involved in prostitution-related offenses at a cost of $110,000 for the New Options for Women program for approximately 11 months. The Bureau's Youth Services Division will host a regional training for 45 school resource officers at the Bureau's training facility and send new Bureau SRO personnel to the National Leadership Summit presented by the National Association of School Resource Officers. The City of Gresham Police Department will use their allocated portion of JAG funding to purchase non-fixed solid metal fencing, a security gate, and a camera system for the patrol vehicle parking lot. They will also fund officer overtime for their every 15 minutes program for area high schools. As part of the required solicitation review process, the Police Bureau posted the grant solicitation and Bureau contact information on the city's Police Bureau webpage on August 8th, 2017. Visitors to the site were able to view a description of the grant program, the solicitation, and fiscal services contact information. The solicitation will be removed and the application posted on September 5th, 2017. Visitors to the site will be encouraged to contact fiscal services if they have any questions or concerns about the application or about the application process. This public governing body review of the draft application document provides an opportunity for public comment and involvement, which satisfies a requirement of the Justice Assistance Grant solicitation process. At this time, do you have any questions regarding the grant application?
Colleagues, any question? Very good. Any public testimony on this item?
They left. Oh.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Watchdog X. Again, I like the LifeWorks program. I agree they should have this funding, and I hope they get additional funding in the future. I think it's a great program. Another issue I have is that on the Gresham, and I hate to say this, on using the money for fencing and various things like that, just in my own position, in my own opinion, I kind of question the use of that money for fencing around a parking lot and different things like that. I would much rather see this type of funding going toward such as a LifeWorks and utilizing the current program they have where this funding goes to, and just have Gresham come in and use their general fund for, infrastructure on parking lots. So that's my opinion, whether people want to agree with me or not, but it's kind of where certain money goes, and this is a special program to go in certain directions. Another issue I have on this is I understand Multnomah County elected not to participate on this grant application. I wasn't quite sure why they would not want to participate with you on this. Did they receive funding in the past already from this program? So just in this information, it just said that Multnomah County at this time elected not to participate. And again, I think it's a great program. Definitely approve the grants. One of the things I did have a little bit of an understanding is when we were looking at the total amount of the grant, and then it appeared to say it was over, like, if I'm correct, a 3 to 4 year time frame. Was that money going to be implemented in certain amounts, or am I kind of looking at that wrong? Is there going to be more money coming down the line in the years from this program? I was a little unclear on that, and like I say, if you look at the dates, it goes out quite a ways on the date, so I was a little unclear on that, on how they were going to fund the actual grant money and when it would be delivered to these different programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob, did we have any sense of that, how the funds actually get allocated? Should we be extended the grant?
The allocation of the funding is up to the participating agencies. So the City of Gresham and the county are listed as disparate agencies. And should they choose to apply for the grant, we would come up with an agreed upon amount. This is a successor grant to the local law enforcement block grant. So as such, we've essentially been receiving funding from this and its predecessor program for 20 years. And the proportion at which it has been shared with the disparate agencies has been relatively constant on a percentage basis.
So do they issue us a lump sum and then we determine locally how to allocate it between the partners?
It can be managed both ways. The way we treat this is as a reimbursement grant when we have gone and established a set of expenditures that match the application process or any revisions that take place over time. We would submit that for reimbursement, as is the case with most grants.
Is this a one-year grant, or how does it?
This is over a 3-year period.
3-year period, okay. And so we set the pace presumably over that 3-year period based on the expenditures as we've chosen to divide them with the City of Gresham and these nonprofits.
That is correct.
Okay, that's helpful for me too. Very good. Colleagues, any further questions before we move this one? This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you. Colleagues, so we have a long slew of second readings, and just for the viewing public, these are items that have already been heard by the council. Public testimony has already been taken on these items. They were previously moved to second reading, and now we take the formal votes. So if you could read the next item, please, 962.
Create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the North Settle Road Local Improvement District.
Colleagues, any further questions, comments? Please call the roll.
Fritz?
So I am actually going to make some comments here. It's not often that we have a local improvement district where a lot of the property owners feel like the expense is too much. It's then even less common that we approve the local improvement district anyway. And I'm doing so purely on the basis of trusting Andrew Abbey, who said at the hearing that he would be looking into how to make the final cost be more like 4 million rather than 8 million. My understanding from the testimony we heard was that people did want the improvement done, but they were concerned about the cost. So knowing that all of us read our emails and also that Andrew would let us know if he's not able to do it, I'm giving it an unusual aye.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The local improvement district is approved. Next item, please.
963, authorize Portland Fire and Rescue to provide limited fee-for-service patient transport under unique and unusual circumstances and authorize application to Medicare as ambulance services provider.
Colleagues, any further questions or comments? Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, please.
964, authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for construction of the Sunnyside East Reconstruction and Green Streets Project number E10370 for an estimated cost of $2.64 million.
Colleagues, any further issues here? Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The competitive solicitation and contract is authorized. Next item, please.
965, authorize a competitive solicitation and contract with the lowest responsible bidder and provide payment for construction of the Concordia Sewer Rehabilitation Project, number E10677, for $4,824,200.
Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The competitive solicitation and contracts authorized. Next item, please.
966, authorize a...
Mayor, I would like to propose that we place emergency clauses on 966, 967, and 968, so we can meet a deadline of,
A second.
well, it's a second reading, but then it would still go 30 days.
Okay.
That's correct. It gets rid of the 30-day limitation. So
I would ask that we suspend the rules and adopt an emergency clause on these three.
okay, why don't we do this? Could you please read all three items? We'll take the vote on that amendment, which has been, the motion is by Commissioner Fish. The second is by Commissioner Fritz. So let's read all three items, 966, 967, 968.
967, I'm sorry, 966, authorize a service and maintenance agreement with Portland General Electric Company in the amount of $1 million for transmission maintenance services for the Portland Hydroelectric Project. And 967, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Eugene Water and Electric Board in the amount of $420,000 for scheduling services for the Portland Hydroelectric Project. And 968, authorize a power purchase and sales agreement with Portland General Electric Company for the sale of hydroelectric power generated by the Portland Hydroelectric Project.
And to be clear, the emergency ordinance that we're about to vote on will apply to 966, 967, and 968. Please call the roll.
I'm sorry, what was the reason for the emergency?
So that we can have the contracts in place effective as of September 1st.
Because the previous ones are expiring.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The amendment is adopted for all three ordinances. Back to 966. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
This is another example of where someone has earned my trust, and therefore I'm happy to support this. And thank you, Commissioner Fish. You and your team have definitely earned my trust. Aye.
Thank you very much.
Fish?
Mayor, if I can, I just give my comments to this item, and then I'll just vote the
Very good.
others. We're joined today by a number of people from the Water Bureau family I want to acknowledge. One is Mike Stewart, the director. One is Teresa Elliott, our chief engineer. One is Karen Moynihan, our crack lawyer. And Todd Lofgren, who is my liaison to all of the utilities. We have other members of the legal team here, representatives of the pub and the cub, And Mayor, I think it's worth, since this is the last item, just to take a quick moment and put this into context. Because in all the years that I've had the honor of being the commissioner in charge of the utilities, I don't think we've had a year quite like this. And it may turn out I haven't quite had a year like this for myself personally as well. And, you know, we don't take the time, because of the rush of business, just to pause and reflect on the work that public servants do to advance really hard work in our city. And I want to commend the professionals that I have the honor of working with. And they've had a difficult year. Now, we could start with the easy part, which is the auditor survey came out, and we got high marks. About 2/3 of our customers give water services favorable ratings. And that may sound strange, given all the background noise that these kinds of projects kick up. But I think it reflects a basic set of confidence that people have in the services they receive, and the fact that I think people instinctively understand they get good value for what we offer. And remember, we deliver about 2 gallons of water for a penny. And if you want to just put that in context, go to the grocery store and find out how far a penny goes if you want to buy water. We also, in the auditor's report today, in the financial condition report, I think we got another validation in terms of the progress we're making as a council in insisting that we invest in modernizing our system. And Mayor, watching the tragedy unfold in the Gulf Coast and watching reservoirs come under enormous stress, watching basic infrastructure across the country erode because it's being neglected, I'm proud to live in a city where we have said we are going to invest in a modern infrastructure, not just for today, but for future generations. But this year was a year unlike any other that I can think of at the Water Bureau. And as you know, it started with a community-wide conversation about lead in the water. Now, we don't have lead in our water or in our distribution system, but we do serve high-risk homes and buildings that have lead, and we have a role to play in helping to do risk mitigation. And we're working with our regulators to take some prudent steps in that regard. But we also learned this year that we lost a one-of-a-kind variance, the only city in the country that received a variance from that portion of LT2 that required us, that gave us a pass from having to treat our pristine Bull Run water. And we can argue about the circumstances that led to the revocation, but I think it became clear to the community the question was not whether we're going to put our heads in the sand and just hope it goes away, but the question is, how are we going to respond? I could not be prouder of the public conversation that the Water Bureau and our oversight bodies helped to broker. And I will tell you, in all candor, I had very little confidence about where that conversation was going to end up. And I think that's the highest compliment that I can bestow on my team is that, and I should also acknowledge our Chief Financial Officer. I regret not mentioning Ken, because Ken has been a full partner in all this, Ken Rust. But because the process was structured as an honest inquiry in looking at difficult options, I did not, up until the final vote, the final moment of the final vote, have a clear sense of where the council was going. But I was particularly proud of the quality of the conversation we had at the community, the voices of our partners at the county in community health, our oversight bodies, our wholesale customers, editorial boards, ordinary citizens, critics, supporters, people coming in and offering different visions of how we proceed. I think it is a great credit to this body that, faced with some very tough choices, we chose to look at a 100-year vision for how we can not only protect water quality, but our cherished Bull Run watershed. And it will come at a cost, and we will work as a council to manage that cost, but it is not typical of every city that they think 100 years. And we heard that from the auditor, and we've heard that from some of our partners about the tendency increasingly in government to think about 1 year or the next challenge, and not a generation or two. In the midst of all this, we had some very difficult choices to make about hydropower. And just when you think you've got your eye on all the various moving pieces, along comes hydropower. And I think we were all struck, or at least I was struck, and I think you were, colleagues, at what a complicated question this was, again, with no clear best answer, but one that we learned early on required a deeper dive. And when it first came to council, I found some of the moving pieces hard to follow. And so we hit reset. And I will say that I believe it was you, Mayor, who told me following our first work session that you felt that Karen Moynihan's legal presentation, when she gave the sort of soup to nuts summary of how we got here, all the moving pieces, was sort of the model of what you'd like to see in future proceedings like that to really bring the council up to speed. It was not an advocacy document. It was designed to inform, and it was comprehensive, and we ended up circulating it to each office because it was so well done. Well, in the course of this conversation, we had a very stark choice. We had lost a sweetheart contract that we had had for many years with PGE that all parties acknowledged was a heads we win, tails they lose contract, the kind of contract we wish we had more of, but we did not control our fate. We could mothball hydropower and, in a sense, turn our back on $55 million of public investment to bring us to this point, or we could take a calculated risk based on the advice we received from a blue chip roster of professional consultants that we hired to guide us in the negotiations and see whether we could continue to provide clean energy and value for our community. And remember, what we're talking about is enough clean energy to power over 8,000 homes. So it is not an insignificant amount of value. I think reasonable people on this one, as with many other things we've talked about this year, could land differently. But what made me especially proud of my bureau is in a very complicated arena, easy to caricature, easy to people getting some of the facts wrong. They put the facts on the table, answered the concerns raised by the oversight bodies and my colleagues, and ultimately brought us to this moment. Let me be very clear. Following the work session, the council session, the numerous briefings with our oversight bodies and individual briefings, we have not at any time said we can eliminate risk in this deal. And were we to do so, that would be the height of irresponsibility. There is some risk, but it is a risk that the chief financial officer has determined is very small. But Mayor, you and I, in assessing that risk, believe that we needed to add an additional measure of protection for our taxpayers, because this is a enterprise that impacts our taxpayers, not our ratepayers. It is, in effect, a general fund bureau that is managed through an old agreement by the Water Bureau. But the burden of the risk falls on our taxpayers, not our ratepayers. And so what we agreed to do, and I think it was especially prudent, is to adopt an amendment which says that for the time being, any positive revenue generated from our hydropower business will stay at the Hydroelectric Bureau until such time as the chief financial officer and our budget office are comfortable that we have the reserves so that there's very little risk to the general fund, and then we can return some of that positive net flow to the general fund. I think that is a prudent thing to do, and it essentially eliminates over the life of this deal any risk to the general fund as much as humanly possible. I don't know whether in the long term we should be in the hydropower business, but we have a lot of water in the Bull Run, and we have a chance to generate clean energy, and this is an honorable deal. And finally, just one word about an issue that I think got kind of bent out of shape in some of the public conversation. We, like many other utilities, have agreed to enter into a confidentiality agreement on the price, and we are not like a number of other peer organizations who have done so. And the reason is we were able to get above market rates for the people we serve. And because we're a market participant, we needed to keep those rates confidential. Not from each of you, the decision makers. You had access to that. Not to our oversight, not to the professionals at the city, but it is not to be published. And it is exempt, clearly exempt from public records. No one has questioned that. Now, time will tell whether that is the right approach, but it is the approach which was used by other utilities, public utilities, that were also seeking to gain an advantage for their ratepayers. So the idea somehow that we've taken an approach which works against our ratepayers is Orwellian, This is how we got a better return. And it is a function of the fact that we are a market participant that we think this confidentiality was in the public interest. Time will tell. And I'm not here to either oversell or undersell this deal. I'm here simply to say I think this is the best deal that we could cobble together under the circumstances. I appreciate the thoughtful consideration of my colleagues, the CUB, the pub, and everyone who has weighed in. And today I'm pleased to vote aye.
Wheeler?
I cannot top that. Commissioner Fish has stated the case eloquently. He has clearly stated the trade-offs. And Commissioner Fish, I want to personally thank you and your team and the professional staff for being exceptional in terms of organization, in terms of presentation, in terms of working with me, working with my team to ensure that the myriads of questions that I asked, some very good and insightful, some completely irrelevant, but without judgment, each and every one of those questions and concerns which were raised were addressed to well beyond my satisfaction. So I appreciate it, and I appreciate your personal leadership. I think it's been exemplary on this issue. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Next item, please.
Roll call on 967.
Correct. Call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. Next item, please call the roll.
Udaly?
Aye.
Fritz?
Well, this one is the purchase agreement and sales agreement with Portland General Electric. And I just have to say that I think it's fiscally responsible to keep using a $50 million investment to generate power. It's a moral responsibility to keep using renewable power. And so I appreciate your skill in bringing this to us. Commissioner Fish, aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The ordinance is adopted as amended. We're adjourned till 2 p.m.